Hey guys, Space Guru 5 here with the second installment of Guptill Month. As I'm sure some of you are aware, Guptill89 made a response video to a commentary made by my good friend Youngblood91 on one of his Rantorek shorts. Yes, he got to him that much. But guess what? Guptill's logic, which I call Guptillianism, is ineffective of rebutting arguments made by other persons. By that I mean his counter-arguments are so weak that they cannot be considered valid counter-arguments. Without any further ado, let's take a look at the train wreck ahead of us. And I'm aware that I'm kind of pushing it by making a commentary of a response to a commentary of a video, but you know what? Whatever, it's nice to take risks sometimes. Let's tune into film 89.G. And I'm skipping the tediously long intro, by the way.
What do you know? I have encountered someone who is actually worth my time. Youngblood Fantasy 91. Recently, he constructed a commentary on Rantorek Shorts number 4, The Unimportance of Change.
What the hell do you mean recently? His commentary was posted a half year before you made this response video to him.
It was detailed, he was soft-spoken, and he had some interesting points to bring up. Now, many of them I disagree with, and that is why I was determined to make this response to him.
That's because Guptillianism calls for the need of self-righteousness in order to make a point go across.
Now, instead of doing a commentary on a commentary, what I'll do instead is list the most important arguments and give my thoughts about them. Without any further ado, let's dive in. Argument number 1.
He's considered to be the archetypal sonic fag.
Okay, people, here's what you need to have hammered into your brains.
That I really am a sonic fag!
If you describe someone as pretty and sometimes hot, it does mean attractive, but not in a mounting sexual way.
Like I said in episode 1, hot can be used to describe something that is found to be sexually arousing. I find it very ironic how you are a grammar and spelling Nazi, yet you are unaware that words such as hot can have double meanings.
Sorry, Jamin, but your argument falls flat on its face.
I think you're mistaken. Your argument has fallen flat on its face, not the one made by the Blackbuster critic. Trying to defend your views on this is absolutely irrefutable, because the same people on here will provide major examples to counter your conjecture that it's okay to describe non-existent children and adults as hot.
And to add to that, by your own logic, it seems to me that if anybody describes anything as hot, including a stylish backpack or a pen, people are going to cast horrified looks on them and think, "Dear God, he wants to do that backpack! Somebody call security!"
Well, that's simply not entirely true, because using hot in that meaning is defined to me as something considered to be fashionable or trendy. For example, right now in the 2010s, silly bands can be described as hot because it's what today's generation thinks is fashionable or trendy.
Besides, as long as the anthropomorphic character looks humanoid and is fictional, why does it matter? Quit acting like they're real.
Oh, we're the ones who are acting like they're real? Well, who do you think said that Rouge the Bat is a femme fatale and judged all the other females based on the list based on their goddamn hairstyles, especially when having an orgasm over Julie Sue's ponytail? Certainly not me, and certainly not all the other sane people on YouTube. Don't point fingers at others over something that was entirely of your own doing, and don't judge people as acting like they're real when you did so yourself.
Argument dos.
Thank you for describing the nature of our working capitalist society. I see the point of your video slowly flying away into the distance as you continue your sad nitpicking on this trivial topic.
Youngblood, there is a difference between nitpicking and majorly criticizing something.
I'm pretty sure Youngblood's smart enough to realize that, and where examples of each could be found. What you were doing was complaining about minor changes to corporate logos, and that is exactly how nitpicking is defined.
Throughout the whole presentation, I have been criticizing major stuff. Nitpicking, on the other hand, is arguing about a change that is so tiny, it wouldn't make any sense to criticize it. Take, for example, the new Nintendo seal. It still has the same font and oval, but it's white. It used to be red and nothing else. If someone complained about that, that would be the proper definition of nitpicking. A major revision would be taking the words orange juice, changing them to OJ, and removing the picture of the orange or oranges.
Not necessarily. OJ, like MTN, is a common abbreviation. OJ is used to abbreviate the words orange juice. So therefore, the name of the product is still the same. If someone complained about that, it would still be a form of nitpicking.
Certain insignias are starting to go down that path. Argument 3.
Even if the logo does change, you can still locate the product label on the box or on the cover anyways. That's what product labels are for. Quick identification of the product so that you can buy it. If you can read the product label, you're fine. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Here's what you don't understand. If you take the design of a product and then warp it around, you're not going to identify it as quickly as you could before. Heck, some people might not notice it at all.
You sound like you think that you're smarter than everyone else. Well, you're trying to rebut a very well-educated man who currently takes college and knows much more than you seem to. I sincerely doubt you have any understanding of how our economy works. If the logo of a product doesn't change, people will lose interest in the product, and the company responsible for supplying it would lose money. Thus, they have to change their logos to keep making money to supply more of their products to the marketing industries. That's one way of how capitalism works. If you didn't know that, Guptill, then you're kind of screwed.
If you took a closer look at the difference between the old and new Tropicana cartons, the name of the brand is right where it needs to be on the old one, but on the second one, the words 100% orange stands out way more than the name of the brand turned sideways.
No, they don't. I can read Tropicana perfectly fine on the second design. You're just being exaggerative here.
Thankfully, however, the designers realized the problem and transfigured it back to what it should look like.
They reverted back to their original design, not because people couldn't easily identify it anymore, but because people found it to be unaesthetic and stupid. Seriously, dude, don't pull an irate gamer on me and misinterpret your online resources. Otherwise, no one will take you seriously. But then again, whoever does take you seriously.
In the product world, you are going to need to judge it by the cover anyway.
Says who?
Argument 4.
The two pictures you showed me of the Mountain Dew logo demonstrated minimal modification of the logo itself. So the word mountain was shortened to the abbreviation MTN. It's a common abbreviation. And who cares if the word dew is more slanted to the right? It's still red, the background is still green, and the general design is similar. I would complain if there was a complete overhaul of the logo, not minor changes that spur you into an OCD fit.
This is the only argument that I agree with.
Whoa. Back up the crazy train. I thought you said that these were arguments that you disagreed with, not acquiesced completely. Make up your mind.
The reason I compared those two pictures together is because I thought that MTN would perplex some persons. Little did I know, I was being a bit of an idiot.
No shit, Sherlock. How long did it take you to deduce that?
Argument number 5. In response to the new Nike emblem, Youngblood mentioned this.
Dude, it's a universal symbol. Do you realize how much advertising we come across today? Do you realize how many times we see this logo and associate it with shoes, sports, and Michael Jordan? Unless if you were born in an uncontacted civilization, Guptill, then there is no way in the 9 regions of hell that this symbol can go unrecognized by someone living in a country with any semblance of an economy.
True, Nike is widely recognized by millions of individuals, yet when you don't have the name on the trademark, sooner or later, someone might ask what the name of it is.
I agree that someone might ask for its name. One time, my school friend DFG Hawk, aka Daniel Golden, asked one time what company the Nike swoosh belonged to. However, ever since he got that answer, that knowledge has stuck with him. Also, if you looked at the shoes themselves, you'll find the name of the company alongside the trademarked logo, thus confusion would end right there.
And quite frankly, I think the populace hate asking that type of question. Also, a couple of other corporations have a design similar to the Nike swoosh, such as Brooks.
That looks nothing like the Nike swoosh. It just looks like a deformed 7.
Saucony.
That looks like a hockey stick with holes in it. Or, as Youngblood described it, the Nike swoosh that someone shot bullets into and thus it collapsed.
Mizuno.
I have no idea what the hell that looks like, but one thing's for sure, that does not look like the Nike swoosh. While I can agree that all three examples you showed me are somewhat interesting, notice how they all have the name of their trademarks on the logos. Even if you mistook the logos for being the Nike swoosh, all you'd have to do is look at the name of the company and conclude, oh, that's not Nike. It's almost insulting how you forgot to bring that up.
In other words, Youngblood, your argument is kind of irrelevant. If you look at some of the other running shoes insignias, they're all conveniently labeled with the name of the product right there. Nike doesn't retain that trait.
Of course it does. Look at their shoes sometime. They clearly say Nike on them.
Which it should have. Argument SIX. After explaining that Gatorade transformed to G, and the fact that it's referred to only as G, he had this to announce.
Not necessarily. Although the company could call it G for their ad campaign, people still refer to it as Gatorade either way.
Cool.
And besides, like I said, if you can find the product label on the bottle, then what is the point of complaining?
Well, see how the name is scrunched in between the word perform and the nutrition facts? Not to mention it's gray, like the other words. It actually seems to blend in.
I agree, it is kind of hard to see, but wait a second. Look at that G. That lightning bolt. It was on the old Gatorade logo too, so how can you possibly be confused by it if you're familiar with Gatorade's iconic lightning bolt that they've had for about 40 years now? Do you have any idea what the word scrutiny means? It means carefully examining something, in this case the new Gatorade bottles. If you had scrutinized it thoroughly, you would have brought up the iconic lightning bolt. Well, that's another argument sent to the garbage disposal.
Believe it or not, my stepdad had trouble finding Gatorade drinks. I'm dead serious.
Corporate logos are there so that they can attract consumers, not pander to those who wish to go against the current of the human condition and have things never change ever.
Well, it very well seems that way now.
Adam Smith would be very disappointed with you.
Probably, but you should keep in mind that Smith wasn't a few centuries ahead of his time.
Yeah, you're not even a second ahead of your time.
The drawback with his Wealth of Nations inquiry is that it doesn't take into account scheming unnecessarily.
Since when were logo changes a part of scheming?
Therefore, much industry is ignoring his principles. Argument siete. This is the response to the What's G ads.
I looked up the commercial on YouTube, Guptill. How can you not think of Gatorade when you see those commercials? They feature athletes, dude. If you have common sense and can connect the dots, you will realize that the athletes plus the letter G involves Gatorade, since previous commercials had similar themes. Unless you can think of a major shoe franchise starting with the letter G that has famous athletes endorsing it, then your gripe is in vain.
Preceding ads didn't have a theme almost identical to What's G, Youngblood. The ads usually involved running, throwing balls, striking pucks, and so on. It also exhibited the beverage usually by way of somebody washing it down and developing colorful sweat. What's G, on the other hand, just features a long row of stationary athletes and a stylish letter G at the end. If the promoter does not display the object that describes the product, confusion is going to occur even if you don't expect it to.
I agree that for a split second, I thought that the commercial involved shoes instead of Gatorade. However, what you need to consider is that What's G still has athletes that many people know about, such as Tiger Woods. When I did that, I dismissed the shoe theory and stuck with the Gatorade theory. I have no idea how you could have missed that.
Argument 8.
Many corporate logos have changed since a long time ago. You think Chrysler was bad? Look at the Warner Brothers logos. But wait, you say, how could they have changed? They were Warner Brothers, for Christ's sakes. Well, take a look at this logo. This was when 7 Arts purchased a part of Warner Brothers back in the late 60s. That was their logo for a short period of time, but then reverted back to their original later. And what about Scream Gems? First you had the Columbia Torch Lady, then this logo that looks like it should have been in the Modern Art Gallery. All logos are guilty of these major changes, Guptill, and all of Chrysler's logos are very well known either way. So if you can't pick out the Chrysler wings or the Chrysler Pentagon, then you're not familiar with Chrysler at all. Simple as that.
True, the Warner Brothers and Screen Gems alterations were pretty stupid. But at least they had the courtesy to place the business name along with the insignia.
You could ask the name of the company to which the insignias are assigned to and could get the answer either by way of a person familiar with Chrysler or just simply the internet. Don't tell me that we have no access to such information, Guptill, since we are currently living in a society where everything is on the internet and can be found with some light research, and you can get your answers like that.
Also, little do you know, you were actually adding to my argument. I complained about Chrysler because while some can be familiar with the manufacturer, they can still get bewildered, especially if they went to an old-fashioned car show, or if they're on the road and spot a vehicle with any one of these symbols on it, because they can forget what trademarks the corporation had.
I'm not going to reiterate myself.
This response also applies to what you mentioned after I said, "What company is that again?" Argument 9.
Have you seen the modification to the Pepsi logo over the years? The general design remained the same, of course, but the Pepsi font changed, and the overall design of the Pepsi ball slightly changed. And you're okay with that?
Yes, I am, because as long as it says Pepsi on the can, bottle, or other object, nothing is wrong. The long line of modifications is a perfect example of consistency, something a few other organizations like Nike and Gatorade lack.
Well, what about when you complained about Tropicana? The original and new designs both said Tropicana on them and could be read clear as day, yet you complained because the name was turned sideways on the new design. And what about Gatorade? Its name changed, sure, but at least they still retain their iconic lightning bolt. And what about Nike? They still have their iconic Nike swoosh. Well, get this. The name Pepsi moved all around the logo over the course of time, and I'm sure it'll continue to do that for many more years to come. I don't think you have any right to say that those organizations lack consistency, Guptill. Because I really think you lack consistency.
But what about the Mountain Dew example you presented earlier? You had a problem with the word being more italicized, but you have no problem with complete font changes unless the Pepsi ball looks similar.
Refer to what I said earlier about the Mountain Dew issue since I don't want to recapitulate.
I don't know. What is the point of this video?
To point out actual problems with the economy that most folks take for granted?
Since when did logo changes have anything to do with how the economy is functioning? Besides, we all take logo changes for granted, but not you. You see one little logo change and you go run on their asses. Seriously, dude, what do you know about the economy? Since clearly, from what I can infer from all the stuff that you've shown me, you have absolutely no idea how our economy works.
Argument Dees. This is his opinion about the remodeling of the Dunkin' Donuts building.
The current design didn't change too much. They just adopted orange, so of course the outside sign must turn orange to keep the building up to date so that it doesn't get replaced with another store. The roof must match too, so the building doesn't look out of place and outdated with the new sign change. And the interior must match for the same reason. So why are you complaining about progress and maintenance? Do you want your local Dunkin' Donuts to go out of business?
If an establishment only gets redecorated, it shouldn't be considered progress. The real definition of progress would be expanding the size of the structure or putting up an entirely different premise altogether.
Progress can mean improvement, such as redecoration of the establishment, or positive development. It doesn't have to be expanded in size to be considered progress.
Take this, for instance. The old McDonald's properties in New England had an appearance that looked like a 3D interpretation of the original Pizza Hut seal. Now, the buildings are rectangular cubes with bricks and stone. Despite the fact that it slightly looks like a car dealership, it's an appropriate redesign.
Yes, and so is the redesign of the Dunkin' Donuts facility. Do I need to say more?
Also, they added more parking spaces. On the other hand, going from this to this doesn't work.
Why not? It's still technically progress and maintenance. I mean, sure, the top of the building changed, but that's still progress and that's still maintenance. Because in order for the building to be kept up to date so it doesn't get replaced with another store, it has to match the sign. Do you not understand what the fuck you're saying?
And besides, as long as the sign has the words Dunkin' Donuts on it, individuals are going to order the treats anyway. Argument number 11.
Your way of thinking is dangerously counterintuitive to the nature of the invisible hand of the economy. Again, Adam Smith would spit in your face.
Oh, please. If I didn't possess the knowledge exemplified in the presentation, the bad U.S. economy could get worse.
How does complaining about little changes to logos save the U.S. economy from detriment? Logos aren't responsible for a bad economy. It's the fact that our government officials are spending much of our nation's money to go to war and try to repay the major debts they have with all the other countries that they owe them to. Think about all the wars we had in the past, for example, and are currently fighting to this day. World War I. After it ended, the economies in Germany and the US began to decline due to warfare costs. World War II. Before the war started, we were faced with the Great Depression, and many people lost their homes and jobs in both Germany and the US. Hell, Germany was in shit between World War I and World War II. That's why they turned to Adolf Hitler. He promised the Germans that he'd restore the wealth of Germany when he only made it even worse. It wasn't because he changed corporate logos, Guptill. It was because he didn't fulfill his promises and he led the Germans further into debt. The modern wars we have in Iraq and Afghanistan. The U.S. is spending much of our money to pay expenses for these wars, and because of that we're beginning to face a modern Great Depression because they haven't paid off their debts. Do corporate logos fit anywhere in those facts? What kind of economical superhero do you think you are?
A lot of officials are greedy and are spending thousands of dollars to do things that inflame the financial crisis, such as this. In Somersworth, New Hampshire, there used to be a medium group of houses in one particular area. Citizens lived in that area. There was also a furniture store as well. But one day, all those buildings were torn down just to construct a CVS pharmacy. If you thought demolishing the houses was bad enough, across from the pharmacy is another pharmacy owned by Rite Aid. Brilliant. Simply brilliant. What they should have done was nothing. But if they kept the plans to put up a CVS pharmacy, all they would need to do is set it inside the place where Rite Aid was if that particular store went out of business, and just keep the homes and furniture store. That would be an example of a healthy economy. I doubt Adam Smith would be mad at me.
I hate to break it to you, Guptill, but that is how our economy works. It's called capitalism. The idea of capitalism is competition for business. You think your example is the only one? This kind of thing is happening throughout the United States. Everywhere there are different types of restaurants, gas stations, pharmacies, and so on. However, that is a good thing because people can get what they want from their favorite places. It's how capitalism thrives. You said so yourself. You want the economy to get better? Well, the examples you and I provided are the way that can happen. Also, Adam Smith really would be mad at you because he is actually the father of capitalism to many. And maybe they decided to tear down that group of houses because the living conditions were poor, and the store was probably going to go out of business anyway.
Argument 12. This comes after the closing statement.
Then it is necessary to change it to make sure that the store is kept up with the times and to catch a person's eye. That's the necessary reason to change it, Guptill. You said so yourself.
Bad news. You misunderstood. Again, refer to what I said about that stuff earlier because I don't want to reiterate it.
Guptill, you need to understand the basics of our economy. You can't just have everything remain the same all the time. Otherwise, people will get bored easily and will move on to something else, and put other companies out of business. Sure, there are certain logos that are classic and only went through minor changes, but those were companies that became ridiculously successful and part of our mainstream culture.
Well, guess what? Gatorade, Nike, and Chrysler have been part of the American culture for quite a lot of years, and their symbols didn't have to go through such baffling alterations throughout the course of time. The problem is, Most workers aren't that smart.
Oh, you think you're smarter than everyone else in the economy? You think that pointing out the littlest logo changes makes you a godsend to the economy and saved it from getting worse? Well, like I said earlier, logos have nothing to do with the shit that's going on with our economy in recent years. It's the fact that our government hasn't paid off its debts and keeps going into wars all around the globe. Wars aren't cheap, you know, and we're over $14 billion in debt because of this. That's why our economy is bad. Not because Nike's logo changed or Travis Canada's logo got moved around or Gatorade got shortened to G. You claim to be so smart, but I'm a 14-year-old kid in high school, and even I know more about our economy than you do, and you're supposed to be the adult here. Quit acting like you know everything, and quit acting like you're above everyone else intellectually, because that kind of arrogance is why you keep getting quote-unquote nothing but insults.
Also, it's actually bad marketing to confuse customers. Well, that's it. 12 arguments, all of which I disagree with. That is a lot. So, young blood, as well as everybody else, I hope you've comprehended this long reply and will take into account strategies to help build an actual, robust economy.
Yes, people, complain about logo changes and say that they're the reason why our economy is so bad. I'm sure the people will agree to it for sure.
Thanks for watching, and have a great day.
Another video done and over with. But anyways, you guys should have it locked into your brains by now that Guptill has no idea how capitalism works and how to properly refute. Capitalism, Guptill, is all about the money. It's all about competition to see who's the biggest interest tree here. That's why there are different kinds of fast food places, gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants, hotels, inns, etc. If they don't change their logos, well, I think you guys get the idea now. I said quite a mouthful there, huh? Well, this concludes episode 2 of Guptill Month. I hope y'all enjoyed. Happy 2012 to everyone. Let me know if I need to improve something in my commentaries, whether it be what I say or the information I present. See y'all later.